Welcome everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. I know some of you may be expecting an UMA talk. We are actually changing it up just a little bit, going to talk about Spark today instead, but we actually are going to be talking about UMA tomorrow. So if you're still interested in UMA, definitely check it out tomorrow. So I'm Kevin Hurley. I'm the CTO here at Lightspark. We are super stoked to be able to talk to you today about what we've been cooking up. And I think you'll be excited by it as well. But first, a little bit of context. So when we started Lightspark, we knew we wanted to build on the network that will be around not only in 5 years, not only in 10 years, but 100 years, 200 years from now. And that network is Bitcoin, the most open, neutral, and decentralized network to ever have existed. And building on Bitcoin means also building on top of Lightning, where you now have all the great things that we all know and love about Bitcoin, but you can make them even better. Instant settlement, extremely low fees, the ability to send small amounts to large amounts. Now, we were founded in 2022 with a mission to really modernize money, take it from these legacy rails that have existed since the 60s and 70s, bring them to the modern day, where you can move money just like you move data packets on the internet. Now we're in 2024, still have the same conviction that money needs to be changed and brought to the modern era. And we started doing this with building Lightspark Connect, where we made it incredibly easy to be able to build on top of Lightning. Now you can run a node without any hassle. No notion of channels, no notion of inbound liquidity. It just magically works. And you don't have to do anything to make it happen. We then worked on a seamless integration, where you're able to add our SDKs. You don't have to write hardly any code. And you're able to plug in Lightning and have Lightning up and running in no time. Then we worked on automated routing, where we use AI and machine learning to understand the whole topology of the Lightning graph. We think of it like the Google Maps for Lightning, where we understand where roads are blocked, where there are fast lanes, so that you can route your transactions extremely successfully. Then we built comprehensive reporting and compliance tools, so you can understand exactly what's happening on your node at any point, and have the tools that are needed by big entities to build an onboard to Lightning. From there, we built out universal money addresses, or UMA, where you can now send directly to any bank account using any currency to any other currency, with it settling natively over Lightning. But unfortunately, there are a few things that Lightning still doesn't work super well with. One of those is self-custody. Now, we have tried, many other companies have tried, they've run into technical roadblocks, into economic roadblocks, into regulatory roadblocks. And honestly, this was one of the more frustrating times for myself at Lightspark. We had companies coming to us, desperate to be able to do self-custody. And we tried, and it really just isn't feasible. So why is that? Well, let's say tomorrow we wanted to spin up billions of self-custody wallets on Lightning. It's just not going to work. The first problem you're going to run into, there's only so much block space on Bitcoin. So if you're trying to do billions of self-custody wallets, it's going to take all the block space for years on end. Fees are going to spike astronomically. It's just not going to be viable. Beyond that, the liquidity constraints are massive. If you have these billions of wallets, you're locking up inbound liquidity for each and every one of those. You're going to have billions, if not trillions of dollars sitting idly, locked up doing nothing. You can quickly see it's just not economically viable. From there, things only get worse. Let's say I put my phone in my pocket and my app can't be foregrounded, or I'm going in an elevator, or I go on vacation. I can't receive offline payments in Lightning. Someone tries to pay me, it just fails. And even beyond that, it's massively technically complex. There's a reason you don't see tons and tons of Lightning wallets today. You can't easily, as a developer, add support for Lightning and just be able to create wallets on the fly. So you look at these things, and it's pretty apparent that Lightning just doesn't work great for self-custody today. Beyond that, a second major factor that Lightning can't support well today is stablecoins. Now there have been proposals, there's things like taproot assets, LRC20, to try to solve this problem. But it honestly doesn't work that well. And stablecoins are actually picking up quite a lot of traction right now, both with users and with merchants. You can kind of think of them as maybe US dollar denominated bank accounts that anyone can create on the fly. Now you're in countries where there's massive inflation. You want to hold a stable asset. I think that's something that all of you here are probably pretty familiar with. With stablecoins, you're able to hold a stable asset where you can put your money into it and think of it just like another bank account. But if you look at it today, there's 40, 50 chains that are all trying to solve the same problem. They all have stablecoins on them. Let's look at this totally not fake email from my friend Stella. Kevin, why are there so many chains? I don't know, Stella. I don't know. If you look at email as an analog, there aren't 40, 50 different email protocols. There's a single protocol that everyone plugs into, and they can all communicate easily. That's also what's going to happen with payments. Payments will converge on a single network that works extremely well for the one purpose of doing payments. And as that happens, and as there's more regulatory clarity on stablecoins, there are going to be thousands of stablecoins that are created. Every country will have one. Banks will issue one. You'll have wallets that issue stable assets. And when that happens, it becomes even more complicated. So let's go back to what I was saying before, that Bitcoin and Lightning don't support this well today. So let's first look at Bitcoin. On Bitcoin, honestly, it's not a great transactional platform, and that's a big part of why Lightning was created. You're going to have long block times. You're going to have expensive transactions. So what about Lightning? I was just saying how great Lightning was, so maybe Lightning can solve this problem. Well, in the world with thousands of stablecoins, you're going to have this massive spaghetti network where you have thousands of channels, each with a specific type of liquidity in them. You'll have money locked up in all these channels. Each node has thousands of channels. Quickly becomes not really viable both economically and technically. So what about the alternative? So we could have a single centralized node where it speaks all these different languages of stablecoins. You're able to connect to it, speaks USDT, speaks USDC, speaks the Euro stablecoin. But effectively, you're having a very centralized network, basically a single centralized database. I don't think that's the future of finance that any of us really envision. But at Lightspark, our mission is to make money flow, make it move more easily, and bring it to the modern day. And to do that, you need to be able to solve these problems that I mentioned. And I'm the type of person that when I can't solve a problem, it just sits in my brain, and I think about it over and over. And I can't sleep, and I need my beauty rest to look this good. So we're introducing Spark. Spark is a new layer 2, sits on top of Bitcoin and Lightning. We think of it as just an extension of Lightning, where it makes it easier, makes it better. But now we can solve these use cases, both self-custody, stablecoins, as well as tons of others. And again, it sits natively on top of Lightning. So you no longer need to run a node even, but you can natively interop with anyone on the Lightning network. So anyone you see on any of the apps today that are on Lightning can natively talk to anyone on Spark. But now they have access to billions of new users that can be self-custody. And you can spin those wallets up overnight in a scalable way. So before we get into too much of the details, let's look at kind of the technical decisions behind what we made. We had a few non-negotiables where we knew that it had to have these certain features for any network we wanted to work on. The first needs to be very payments focused. We aren't trying to solve every single problem here, where we do a mediocre job of solving everything. We're trying to solve payments and do it extremely well. And to do that, there's a few core criteria that you need to have. One of those, it needs to be instant. You can't wait minutes, hours for a payment to settle. Second, as I mentioned before with Lightning, it needs to support offline receive, where if I put my phone away or I don't have internet access, I should still be able to receive payments. Third, it needs to be incredibly cheap. We aren't trying to recreate the existing financial system where there are tons of expensive intermediaries. We're trying to make something massively better, and because of that, it needs to be incredibly cheap. Finally, it needs to scale extremely well. You should be able to onboard billions of users overnight. People should be able to integrate and develop on it incredibly easy. And that also goes back to the cheapness. You should be able to spin up these billions of wallets incredibly cheaply. Our next core criteria needs to work with native Bitcoin. Not a wrapped version or some fake version of Bitcoin, but true native Bitcoin. As I mentioned, Bitcoin has all these amazing properties, and we want to be able to take advantage and leverage those as well with true native Bitcoin. Next, it needs to have unilateral exit. Users should be able to leave at any point without anyone being able to censor them. They should have full control of their money and be able to go back to layer 1 without anyone interacting with them. Next, needs to rely on no new opcodes or consensus changes to Bitcoin. Now we've seen all these opcodes and countless others that have kind of been in development for years with no definite time horizon on if or when they will ever actually end up happening. Now you'll hear many stories of companies that were founded on the principles of, oh, we're going to get this opcode or that opcode, and then things will be so great. And all those companies are now in the graveyard because the opcodes never came about. So we knew we wanted to build something that could exist both today and in the future. And if any new opcodes happen, we can continue to make it better. But we don't want to rely on, oh, we need a certain opcode or else this will never work. So these are the core principles on building Spark. And going back just one more moment on the Lightning aspect. We wanted it to work extremely well with Lightning, where an end user on Spark doesn't have any of the complexities of Lightning, but you can still fully interop with anyone that's on Lightning. So within Spark, you don't need to run a node. You don't need to sync to the Lightning graph. You can be offline and still receive payments. But now, it's even better because with all those advantages, you can still talk directly to anyone on Lightning. So that's Spark, but you've heard me talk enough. Let's see some demos of it live in action. So these are actually on mainnet. We are going to first here send from my Coinbase wallet. One of my favorite wallets, and not only because they're a customer of Lightspark, but it doesn't hurt. Here we're going to send a custodial Lightning transaction to a self-custodial wallet. The transaction works natively. You'll see the user on the Coinbase side has no idea the recipient is actually on Spark, and vice versa. But instead, you're just able to super easily send money to anyone in the world and spin up these wallets in real time. Now, let's not even deal with Lightning invoices. Let's just send a payment directly to a phone number. An experience that can be pretty magical. But actually, let's maybe ramp up the difficulty a little bit. Let's do a stablecoin instead. So here we're going to have a US dollar denominated stablecoin. Send it directly to a phone number. You'll see the recipient will get an SMS. They'll click on it, and just like that, they have a wallet spun up on the fly at no cost. You can scale this to billions of users overnight. and be able to actually have stablecoins, have sats sent directly to phone numbers. Now the person typing this was a little slow, so it takes just a moment, but you see the notification here, they click it. You'll see the equivalent amount in sats as well, but it's actually held here in stablecoins. Next, wouldn't be a Lightspark demo unless we talked a little bit about UMA as well. So with UMA, you're able to natively send directly to someone's bank account. And that's what we're going to do here. So now you have billions of self-custody users who can directly send to a bank account. You'll see here, we just put in the amount, send it to the UMA address, which is just a human-readable address, like $Kevin at Ripio, for example. You send the money, and you'll see it being received directly to their bank account in US dollars. And here you can see how little I have in my bank account, so feel free to send me sats afterwards and support me a little bit more. Or tell David, our CEO, to pay me more. Now we also are launching some additional features here, where you actually have the ability to integrate wallets incredibly simply. We're beyond the days where you have to have a big seed phrase that you remember and have to remember how to input that. More modern wallets work with providers that make it super easy to add support for self-custody solutions and still have the ability to do recovery as well. So we're working with the leading wallet providers. We expect in Q4, we're going to be able to help onboard developers so they can easily spin up self-custody wallets in any products that they have. Next, we've talked to countless issuers who have struggled with painful issuance platforms. So in Spark, we are building native issuance platforms to issue stablecoins. It's going to be incredibly easy and have all the features that they need to be able to issue, mint, burn, freeze assets, make it so that they can now issue natively on top of Spark or on layer 1. It's fully interoperable. Any user can move between Spark and layer 1 at any point as well. And they can do that unilaterally, so they can still use unilateral exit, bring their stablecoins back to layer 1, or they can use it on Spark. And issuers can issue for free because they can issue directly on Spark. This will support things like taproot assets. It supports LRC20. Anything that involves just tweaking keys are natively supported here. Now we're going to do a quick technical deep dive. I promise I'll keep it relatively brief, and if you have further questions, happy to talk after the chat as well. So Spark is based on state chains, but we extend it with a lot of superpowers. We take a lot of the weaknesses that state chains have and completely get rid of those. You can now send any amount. There's no absolute time bombs where the state chain disappears at some point. You can do nearly infinite scaling. So let's look briefly at how some of this works. So just as an example, let's say private keys are effectively just a big random number. So for this example, I'm going to have Alice generate a huge random number of 50. That's her private key. She then also works with the state chain entity, who generates a private key of 100. So when combined, it sums up to 150, right? So now if Alice wants to transfer this to Bob, he generates a private key with a value of 40. We now have the state chain entity tweak their key from 100 to 110 so that the summation remains the same. And we can use linear aggregation so that we have the same overall key at 150. We now have Bob generate an exit transaction so that he can leave at any point with unilateral exit. This is a valid L1 transaction that he can put on chain at any moment. The state chain entity now deletes their key, and Alice can no longer do anything with her key because it no longer sums up to the correct value. And how do we do this with Lightning as well? So with Lightning, we do atomic swaps of the Lightning invoice preimage for leaves of the Spark tree. So under the state chain, we generate this big tree that has a bunch of leaves of different amounts. Within that, we can do atomic swaps of these leaves for the Lightning preimage. And now what trade-offs do we make to make this happen? Well, today, Spark isn't fully trustless. We have a path to getting there, but today it's what we call trust minimized. It can go as low as 1 event honest operators. You can also do a threshold if you would like to. But 1 event isn't really good enough, so we try to go beyond that. And what you actually have today is even more minimized than that, where you only need to trust the operators at the exact moment of transference. As long as one of them was honest at the moment of transference, if they are later hacked or they become malicious, there's nothing they can do to take your coins away. So you actually go beyond 1 event, where you have just at the moment of time. But again, also working towards a path where it will be fully trustless in the future. We're committed to doing this completely in the open. All the code's going to be open source. You can run any nodes that you want to. You can audit the code. You can submit patches. We really hope the community embraces this and helps us develop it and make it even better. And we're taking the learnings that we had from building Connect with Lightning, where we made it super simple to integrate. And we're doing the same thing here with Spark, where you can add these SDKs. You're able to spin up wallets overnight. You no longer have this complex integration. You no longer have to run complex software on the user side. You can just import this SDK and have very simple send-receive flows, natively interoperable with Lightning, natively interoperable with UMA, same with L1. So now we can support this rich set of use cases with self-custody wallets that previously you could really only support with custodial solutions. So you have Lightning that works really well with custodial operators, but now we can extend it and have billions of new users who can also natively interop with anything else. So we saw now that we can now do self-custody use cases. We can now do stablecoins. We now have native interoperability with Lightning and UMA. We no longer need those 40, 50 other chains. We can do it on the best network, the most open, neutral, and decentralized and liquid network to have ever existed. We can now unify and converge on this single payments network that works extremely well, and that network's Bitcoin. We have the alpha code built. We are going to be open sourcing that very soon, just doing a little bit of cleanup on it. You can get more information at spark.info. We have technical deep dives there. Would love to engage with as many of you as we can, see how we can continue to make this even better and more useful for you. And that's Spark. So now we have the ability to do self-custody. We have the ability to have nearly unlimited throughput. You can onboard billions of users tomorrow. We no longer have the expensive L1 constraints where you have tight block space, where you have fees that might spike. You no longer have to have parked liquidity in Lightning. We solved the offline receive case. You now have extremely easy to use Lightning that you can interoperate with anyone who's on a custodial solution. But now you also can do it non-custodially. So that's Spark. We're happy to announce it here. We'd love to engage with more of you. We want to make this very developer focused so that developers can now spin up wallets super easily. Instead of having a complicated integration process, you can now have these self-custody wallets. You can create them overnight. You can have nearly no fees at all. You can support stablecoins. We want to build this with all of you. So please engage us and let us know how to continue to make this even better for you. Thank you.